So what if the way you think, the way you make decisions, even the way you try to heal, what if that is not actually the true you? What if most of your life is actually being run by an operating system up here that you never really chose? Rather, a program that you have inherited, programming that has created a lot of conditioning within your mind. Programming that is now running your life, often without you even noticing it. A system that was never really designed to create life in the first place, you could say. So today I want to talk about something that, I believe is at the core of, almost every human struggle that we know, which is this kind of invisible conditioning that is truly shaping how we love, how we work, how we heal, how we succeed or fail, or and also why most of us don't even notice while it's all happening. So, as I see it, we live in a world which is built on this idea of hyper-independence. So we're taught to use this one instead of the heart, We're taught to think instead of to feel. We are taught to perform a lot instead of actually expressing truth. You could say that we are being taught to manage life instead of really actually participating in it. And from a very young age, we learn to override what is naturally arising in us. And slowly and almost invisibly, we become disconnected from our bodies, from nature, from our emotions, from each other, and from life itself. And this is very much a collective conditioning. And the strange thing is, it actually feels quite normal to most people, because everyone around us is very much running that same program. The conditioned mind, the collective conditioned mind. And it's not an evil thing, because the mind in itself is an amazing tool. It's beautiful. But in reality, it's, at its core, it's designed to protect us. And since the day we arrived here, it's been programmed by parents, by culture, by society, by media, religion, And it has been learning from all these places, all these arenas, how to answer and to respond to questions like, how do I stay safe? How do I belong somewhere? How do I avoid being rejected? How do I become worthy of love? And over time, that all becomes survival strategies that get so deeply ingrained with us that it becomes our identity. But here's the big problem, the mind and the conditioning, the programming that lives in here can only kind of regulate and manage life and try to control it and predict outcomes and so on, but it can't truly create life. It plans, it predicts, it controls, it compares, and it tries to optimize. But it's very difficult for it to surrender all these strategies and just try to listen instead. Especially if we're not even aware that it is in fact running our lives and almost all of our decisions. Because this is the tricky part. The program that we all carry, myself included, the conditioning, it doesn't necessarily always look like conditioning to us. It looks like maybe, that I'm being responsible, or that I'm being productive, or, that I'm just trying to improve myself. So it's almost like it's the programming is hiding within good intentions, you could say. I've seen this a lot in my own life, and maybe recognize it. You might meditate, and don't get me wrong, meditation has many benefits, absolutely. But how often do we meditate because we're trying to move away from something? How often do we meditate because we're actually trying to escape discomfort? How often do we meditate because we're trying to change our present state, to slow the breath, to calm the nervous system, to feel better, to find peace? So how often does it become like a strategy from the mind, a way to turn our back on all the sensations and the emotions that are naturally arising within us, and bypassing everything that is a natural product of how we are living our lives? Or maybe you go and you work out, you go to the gym, not always because your body is asking for movement, but because maybe you don't want to feel what's going on inside. I used to do that with running. You don't want to be with what is actually present for you in the moment. So you seek endorphins instead. Or as I have noticed with myself during the years, going to breathwork and cacao ceremonies and plant medicine ceremonies and therapy and all the things, not noticing that underneath it all there's like a subtle message, which is like, fix me, please, so I don't have to be with this, so I don't have to feel this. And to be honest, I see it even in many spiritual spaces, where we often focus on releasing or transcending or transforming, alchemizing emotion, instead of actually simply being with it, right? So we say, feel it, feel it, go into the emotion so that something beautiful can happen on the other side. And so notice what happens there, right? We meet emotion with agenda. We're willing to feel, but only if it changes us, which is, for me, the same as trying to kind of move past the emotion. So we're never actually like really present with the emotion. We're never really allowing it to fully engulf us, because we're always like in the next step, like, what is this going to bring me? This narrative of growth and evolution. And this is still the mind trying to manage life. This is our programming trying to predict and control the outcome. So, you could say the programming, the conditioning we carry, it even, uses healing to avoid truth, the truth of what is in every moment. And I believe, this is why so many people feel stuck, even while, doing all the right things. Because the mind is kind of trying to outsmart nature, outsmart creation, just because it wants to protect us. But here's my question, what if that fast heartbeat, or the anxiety, or the uncomfortable sensations, the fast breath, what if they are not mistakes? What if they are actually intelligent signals? What if they are actually life, which is trying to get your attention? What if the thing that you're trying to move past is actually the doorway into what you're searching for? What if all of it actually has deep purpose? What if they are the thing that we're actually invited to truly be with? without the need for it to change anything. Just be with it so that we, can actually receive the deep guidance and the support from life itself. The thing that we're all constantly seeking outside of ourselves through all these modalities and experiences, But this is not, sadly, this is not what we're taught. Not by parents, not by school, not by society. Instead, we've inherited this collective programming, which just keeps us looping inside the mind. And for roughly 2,500 years, humanity, we have been operating within or like under a distorted expression of the masculine, where we've been obsessed with, productivity and linear time and control and hierarchy and domination of each other and of nature and a deep distrust of feeling. And that's like the scaffolding, that's the architecture that has built our modern world. The programming of our collective conditioning. The collective conditioned mind, which has been shaped by fear and survival and control and productivity and efficiency and growth, never-ending growth. A collective mind that has learned to distrust the body, to suppress emotion and like I said, try to manage life rather than truly participate in it. And so we now live in societies that reward like independence and autonomy and self-reliance and, the pursuit of happiness through personal will. While at the same time, it's like quietly shaming being dependent on others, on friends, on partners, on society, or being receptive. Or, wanting to surrender into something greater. But life is not independent. Every ecosystem, every cell in our bodies, every living system that exists, does that through relationship, through interdependence, through reciprocity. And again, this like very foundational, fundamental misunderstanding has shaped all of our systems, our economy, our education, healthcare, the relationship norms we have. And like I said before, even our approaches to healing, to spirituality. And probably, because it for a while seemed to be working. But now it is evident, for me at least, that it's collapsing, and it's collapsing fast. And we see the signs of exhaustion everywhere. Individually, systemically, burnout and anxiety and collapse and ecological breakdown and wars, and seeing it represented in our so-called leadership also. But this old world isn't failing because we are failing. It's failing because this system was never aligned with life. So let me take a moment to try to make it super concrete and hopefully relatable for you. Spending a moment just speaking into what this conditioning might look like on the individual, everyday life. This is something I know and have been in for a while in my life, feeling exhausted, but instead of resting, you push harder. Because of the story, like successful people, they don't stop, they push through. Success and joy in life is something that comes from effort, hard work. You must carve out happiness and joy for yourself by hard work and pushing through until you arrive at this imagined place, this destination where life will just be super great. And so in the process, you bypass signals from your body and from your intuition. And have I done that a lot? Yes. Again, something from my own life. Relationship conflicts. You're in a conflict and your mind immediately, starts looking for who is right, who is wrong. Instead of trying to listen to what life, maybe through your partner or the person in front of you, is trying to point towards. Looking for right or wrong instead of asking, okay, what is life trying to show me through this moment? Because our programming wants certainty. It wants security, the security of like a winner and a loser, you could say. But life, as I see it, is often, trying to reveal something much deeper. A pattern, a wound, some truth that maybe neither person in the conflict can see alone. And so the conflict is there to help us. Or, longing for career change. I was in that 5 or 6, 7 years ago, this realization that you want to spend your precious time doing something that actually feels aligned with your heart, with your truth below, the programming. But your nervous system freezes, because your whole identity was built around safety and income and status and this idea of belonging to something. So the moment that the potential for change appears, the mind is going to read it as danger. So sometimes, looking at people who seem lazy, maybe it's just protection. Or when you scroll, social media endlessly and sometimes, suddenly feel behind without even noticing the moment that this comparison entered your being. It's not like something dramatic happened in the moment, but comparison came. And in that moment, it's like your inner compass is changing like this. It shifts from what feels true for me right now to like how do I measure up to this, that I see on all the platforms. And again, in the moment, none of this feels very dramatic. It happens in seconds, Like I said, it's so fast you don't even notice. And that's why this programming, this conditioning is so powerful. Because it lives in all these micro decisions, in all these small moments, these decisions that we make hundreds of each day. But the thing is, if we don't start paying attention to this, I think many of us will wake up, years down the road and like wonder whose life have I actually been living? And I want to say that the programming, the conditioning, it also expresses, differently through masculine and feminine patterns. In the masculine, we often see like collapse or control, performance without purpose, or complete emotional disconnection. It's like we're either trying to like dominate life through control, or we collapse completely into passivity because we have lost contact with our purpose. It feels completely lost on us. So I think many men feel pressure to perform and to provide and to be successful, but we have no deep initiation into what our power, our true power, is actually for. So all this performance replaces our ability for devotion to something true. And then we search for achievements to replace whatever actually has true meaning for us. And in the feminine, we often see hypervigilance and overfunctioning and hyper-independence, carrying too much, meaning that the feminine adapts by kind of becoming everything at once, strong and soft and very capable and emotionally available and endlessly resilient. And over time, that creates deep, deep, deep exhaustion, which I imagine many of you can relate to. And it's because, all these survival strategies, they also replace for the feminine, the surrender that I believe they're longing for. Surrender into true containment. Surrender into being, the river that can flow within the riverbanks. So holding kind of replaces flowing. And this is something I want to make videos on, going much deeper into both of these crises for the masculine and feminine. But for now, just understand that these are both survival adaptations. They are both kind of responses to the same underlying separation that we're all living with. And then we meet in relationship, and then we see polarity, reversal, and conflict and confusion. And again, not because the people are broken, but because the operating system is the place we're moving from. And at the deepest level, I think all this programming it's kind of the part of us that keeps forcing our own will on life, that keeps on fighting life, trying to make life happen according to our plan. And the paradox is that I've seen this in my own life and for many around me, that the harder we force, the more life often kind of resists. And learning the difference between acting from up here, letting our conditioning run our lives, and the opposite, which is allowing life to move through us, allowing life to move us, that can completely change how we live. Which is something I'll also make an entire video just on that, because it really does change everything. But the thing is, most of us, we still try to fix our programming with the conditioning itself. I think it was Einstein who said something like, you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that created the problem. And yet, as I see it, most of modern healing approaches still try to fix us using this one, using the programming and the conditioning in the mind. More strategies, more optimization, more control, more skills, more techniques, more retreats, more, Again, something I've seen in my own life. Again and again and again and again, searching for this one thing, the next skill that will make life bearable or hopefully beautiful the way it is. and how I've been trying to fix dynamics in my relationship from that same conditioned place that actually created the struggles. How I was always trying to change outcomes out here without, actually meeting the deeper truth underneath it. And the result for me was the same: exhaustion, because the mind is, trying to free itself from itself, which is obviously not possible. But luckily, as I alluded to earlier, we can begin to make real change. And the shift happens with something quite simple, which is just kind of clear sight. Beginning to see the programs that we're running, beginning to see the loops, beginning to see our conditioning in real time, without fighting it or without trying to fix it, just actually seeing it. Because in that moment, the moment where you are truly seeing your programming, when you have stepped back and you're like in the observer and can see where you're moving from, you are already, like slightly outside of it. So in the work that we and my partner offer, this is a big invitation, to meet what is arising without immediately acting from it. Just notice it and stop running, stop optimizing, stop forcing. Because then slowly a different intelligence begins to kind of have space to emerge. Something that is much more true, something that is much more alive. Which is something I wanna explore in coming videos, like how we force our will, without even noticing, and also the crises of the masculine and the feminine and the different ways they express, and why healing often becomes like another form of control, and what it means to actually surrender to life without becoming passive. Because this path that we are inviting people into, that I'm speaking about here, it's not about becoming less human, not at all. It's just about becoming more aligned with how life actually moves, how creation is, offering us a path ahead. So the most important thing I want to leave you with here now is this, you are not broken. Most of what you struggle with is very much inherited. It's programming. Then the moment you begin to see this programming, then you begin slowly, it takes time, but slowly you begin to remember something deeper and more true than this identity that you've built. Something that's way older than culture. Something that knows how to live without this constant forcing. And for me, that remembering, that is the beginning of like real freedom. Yeah. So if any of this resonates for you, stay tuned here, because I intend to continue going deep with this, and also on the link below you can find some info on our upcoming 3-month online immersion. It starts quite soon, like in a few days, and this is the deepest dive of all of this that we offer. So check it out, and thank you, and take care.